All right. Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Columbia Riverkeeper's webinar, This Land is Native Land. So throughout the Columbia Plateau, from the Hanford nuclear site to Pushpum and beyond, there are an untold number of Native American archaeological sites and cultural resources. Many Columbia Riverkeeper campaigns work to uplift efforts by tribal nations to protect the irreplaceable tribal cultural heritage of the basin. However, the threat of destruction, whether for profit or collection or development, remains a present reality. So my name is Simone Anter. I'm Hickoria, Apache, and Yaqui, and a senior attorney and the Hanford program director at Riverkeeper. And today I'm thrilled to be joined by an incredible panel of individuals who are going to talk about what it means to protect this cultural heritage and how they're doing just that. So the panelists today all collaborated on creating the Save Indigenous History, a children's activity book, which is an activity book designed to teach children about archaeology and respecting sites. So I am pleased to introduce the following panelists who are going to talk about their work, the creation of this activity book, and how it will make a difference in teaching the importance of resource protection. So today we will hear from Anastasia Walhood, the preservation archaeologist at Archaeology Southwest, Shannon Cowell, who leads the nationwide implementation of the Bureau of Indian Affairs Cooperative Agreement with Archaeology Southwest, Trina Sherwood, the traditional cultural specialist at Yakama Nation's Environmental Restoration Waste Management Program, Lorelei Kruger, a Yakama Nation contributing artist on the activity book, Keegan Livermore, the strategic planning manager at the Yakama Nation Language Program, and Samantha Redhart, the STEM coordinator at Yakama Nation's Environmental Restoration Waste Management Program. And with that, I will turn it over to Shannon and Anastasia to get us started.
All right. Can folks see my screen? Okay, fantastic. Hopefully we don't have any issues with this. There we go. All right, so if you didn't get a chance to download the children's activity book, it is available for free. You can scan the QR code or go to the URL here to download it. It's on our website, savehistory.org. So let's get into it. This children's activity book was a partnership with all of these organizations who you see their logos here on this slide. And everyone can introduce themselves when they do their section of the presentation, just because there's so many of us. But we're all connected in one way or another to one of these organizations. So I work for Archaeology Southwest, which is that logo in the bottom right corner. I'm a preservation archaeologist, and I work on the SaveHistory.org campaign, which is the top left one. And we do this work with an agreement with the Bureau of Indian Affairs, and we'll go into more details about that. So I'm going to pass this off to Shannon.
Hi, everyone. My name is Shannon Cowell. I'm a preservation archaeologist at Archaeology Southwest, and I work with Anastasia very closely on our ARPA Assistance Initiative. Here at Archaeology Southwest, we practice preservation archaeology. This basically means we center stewardship values, and we recognize that archaeological sites are best preserved in place right where they are on the landscape as much as possible. Damage and destruction of cultural sites is permanent. These resources are non-renewable, and it can really harm local and tribal communities when they're damaged. We do a really wide variety of projects, including site and landscape protection efforts, non or minimally invasive research, advocacy, and public education. And tribal collaboration winds through all of our initiatives. Next slide. So archaeology, just to give you a bit of background, is the study of human history through the material culture left behind by people. Material culture can include tools, architecture, clothing, cuisine, and these physical objects can tell us a lot about people's cultural values, subsistence strategies, relationships, trade networks, and even beliefs. Archaeology here in the United States is a subfield of anthropology, which is the study of people and culture. And our field is really interdisciplinary. We integrate knowledge from multiple approaches and backgrounds. So we know a lot about geology, statistics, history, Indigenous traditional knowledge, and we bring all this together in a really holistic way. Archaeology can be used to learn about unknown parts of the past too. So it's a really great way to complement other ways of knowing, and it can fill gaps in written and oral histories. Next slide. Archaeological resource crime refers to illegal acts of theft, looting, trafficking, vandalism, and even grave robbing. Cultural sites are protected by a suite of federal, state, local, tribal laws. But still, this is a really pervasive issue. It's going on everywhere, all at once, all around us, every day. And it's something I've seen play out in my career across the nation. Over 90% of sites here in the Southwest have been damaged. And I expect the same is true there in the Columbia Plateau and in the greater Pacific Northwest. Most looting incidents are not reported, which is really unfortunate, and it's really hard to collect data about this issue. And so because these crimes happen outdoors or online, they're really challenging to coordinate investigations and prosecute. So the best thing concerned citizens can do is report violations to the right authorities and share values of stewardship and respect with our friends and family. Next slide.
So one of the work that Shannon and I do, one of the things that we hear a lot is that many people don't think archaeological resource crime has any victims. They think it's a victimless crime, and we push up against that. And a big part of the education that we do is to push up against that idea and show that there are victims to this crime. Archaeological resource crime, we are always putting out there and trying to communicate that these crimes, they disrupt relationship to place. They can interrupt traditions and ceremonies. It's disturbing ancestral resting places, and that cultural heritage is a human right. So Native American communities, descendant communities are that forefront victim, essentially, when we see that ancestors are victims to this, and that it is a larger, bigger, pervasive problem, and it impacts everyone. Additionally, there's public safety concerns that come with these crimes as well, that are like additional concerns with these sorts of crimes. But us getting out there that cultural heritage is a human right, we should protect these places, and that and putting people first when we talk about these sorts of crimes is at the forefront of what we try to do. So we do this work as part of the Archaeological Resources Protection Act Assistance Initiative. This is the agreement that we have with the Bureau of Indian Affairs to do this work, or ARPA, we refer to it as ARPA, Assistance Initiative. And the purpose is to eliminate archaeological resource crime from tribal lands. And our guiding principle is that looting is not a victimless crime. Theft, vandalism, and grave robbing degrade tribal sovereignty and senses of place, community, and security. So from the ARPA Assistance Initiative was born Save History and SaveHistory.org. This is the education and outreach campaign to end archaeological resource crime and educate the public about it. Our goals are to detect archaeological resource crime, respond to it and investigate it, prevent it through education, a big part of what we're doing here with this children's activity book, to restore sites that have been damaged by it, and then collaborate with tribes as we work towards all of those goals to do it better and more effectively. I think this one's you, Shannon.
So here at Save History, we believe an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. At this age group, students are developing critical thinking skills and abstract reasoning. So it's a really great time to foster their curiosity about archaeology and culture and instill respectful values, especially in a really fun and interactive way like a coloring book. Here in Arizona, social studies school standards include teaching Indigenous history in 3rd grade. And it's my understanding that up in Washington, where most of you are, the standards are much more robust, and you have a tribally developed curriculum that's taught in third through fifth grades, which is really impressive. So this coloring book fits in really well with the themes and age group, especially in Washington and public schools. Each edition of this book was created for Indigenous students to foster cultural pride and stewardship values, but it's really a resource everyone can learn from. Next slide, please. So the idea for the very first edition back in 2012 came up after an ARPA training. Our ARPA trainings bring together law enforcement agents and archaeologists. And the instructors you see listed here sat down and talked about creating something that was more proactive, a resource to teach kids about archaeology and looting and vandalism. Gary Cantley on the left is a retired BIA archaeologist, and he was really the founder of the ARPA Assistance Initiative. He's one of my main mentors in this work, and he's the one who wrote the narrative for this book. He collaborated with John Fryer, who's a retired BIA special agent, and he was the one and only agent nationwide working on cultural resource crimes for over a decade. So he has done a ton of work on those issues. He developed the games and put together some of the illustrations for this book. And it has really charming early 2010s clip art that he found online, which I just find so delightful. They were just really resourceful. They put this together themselves in their free time, from what I understand. And they distributed it to many tribal nations through the Bureau of Indian Education and Indian Health Services. They sought feedback from their tribal partners too. And the biggest takeaway was that some of the narrative needed to be rewritten because it was very clear it was written by an archaeologist. But overall, they got really positive feedback. And most of the games and activities in this first edition of the book they still exist. We held on to them. We really wanted to stay true to the kind of aesthetic and intent of this first version. Next slide, please. So when a couple new folks were added to the ARPA Assistance Initiative, like myself, we started to tinker with that first version, but we quickly realized that there was an opportunity here to better align the book with best practices in education and work with Indigenous artists to create new illustrations and activities. Our former colleague, Ashley Thompson, was the former director of tribal collaboration here at Archaeology Southwest. She worked with Mike Webb and Turquoise Devereaux to restructure the sequence of activities. So basically, they made it a bit more logical, more culturally appropriate, and age appropriate too. The new version talked about community. It started off with really just asking kids questions about their community, then built in types of homes people live in, then archaeological tools and terms, and then broadened into a discussion of culture that ties into stewardship, preservation, and even more complex topics like repatriation of cultural items. Ashley and a couple of the artists were interviewed on NPR's Here and Now, and we have a blog post on the Save History website that talks much more about the creation of this book if you're interested. We've distributed over 3,000 copies to tribal nations, the Bureau of Indian Education, and child welfare organizations as well. We give this out for free at trainings and outreach events too. This is available for free to tribal nations, and it's a nationwide resource, even though the cover looks very Southwestern, and a lot of the art is from Southwestern Indigenous artists. This is something that applies everywhere. We also sought feedback from our partners on this too, and our biggest takeaway was that a future edition would really benefit from having a regional focus and being co-created with a tribal nation. So working with the Yakama Nation was a really awesome next step for us.
So this book that we're talking about now, the newly released one with the Yakama Nation, is the third version of the book. I started working for Archaeology Southwest in Shannon last summer, and I went to a conference in Wisconsin Dells, the National Association of Tribal Historic Preservation Officers, or NAPPO conference. I think it was in August of last year, and we were sitting next to the coffee because I like to be by the coffee during conferences. And I think Trina needed a cup of coffee too. Was that right, Trina? You needed a cup of coffee or something?
Oh yeah.
And she ended up sitting next to me, and so I gave her one of the copy of this book with the Southwestern cover, and we exchanged business cards, and we had we kind of chit-chatted for a while. And this is how this got started. So there was an interest in doing one that was relevant to her community. And it sounded good to me. Anything I'm missing in that story, Trina?
No. That was pretty much it. Took off.
So we met at that NAFPO conference in August of 2024. We started actually having conversations and planning the book out in October of 2024. And we did the formal printed release in September, just this past September. So it took about a year to develop the whole thing. The steps to develop this activity book, you can see them here. There's a lot of review and editing that goes into this, so just keep that in mind, that is something that you have to do a lot of. Expect to do a lot of that if you do anything sort of similar. We do pay our artists, the artists who contributed, and this was what the call for artists looked like when we asked for them to come out or submit an application and pick from a pool of really talented folks. So I'm going to pass this off to Trina.
Good afternoon. I feel very blessed that I had this opportunity to meet Anastasia and Shannon during the NAFPO conference. And ARPA is one of the protection laws that we implement to take care of all of our cultural resources on the Hanford site, which is where I am a tribal monitor. I go out there and look after the cultural resources during activities, cleanup activities that the Department of Energy, the BPA, the Bonneville Power Administration, the Pacific Northwest site office, and also the United States Fish and Wildlife Service. We work with all of these federal agencies and the contractors that are involved in oversight of any activities that are happening along the Columbia River. And so this book, I feel, is of great importance because there's a little bit of, there's a gap out in our community on the Yakama Nation reservation for the language. And so the grade that this was aimed at is perfect for something that the students can have in their communities on the reservation and off the reservation. We have a lot of tribal membership along the Columbia River and elsewhere. So I feel this will really help with our language program and for our families that they can interact with one another. We want intergenerational connection between grandparents and their grandkids, parents and their kids, aunts and uncles and the kids, and cousins, maybe to look at this copy of this Save Our Indigenous History, because they're going to connect to the cover, which has Maud Adams on there, and they know Maud Adams are tribal children here in this area on the Columbia Plateau, and all of the artwork is really relevant to what they learned growing up, We wanted to honor some elders that are listed here on this slide. We had to decide which photo we wanted to put on in the book, and that took some time to get it just right, because you want to capture the image to where the families are going to feel pride and to be able to relate to this book. And I think we did hit it spot on. We have received a lot of good feedback from the photos, and going through the book, we did review over and over the pages, the art. We went back and as for example, the photo with the diggers, the root diggers, I felt that it needed to be a cultural landscape in the background where, you know, the families, you know, we want them out on the cultural landscapes. And the word search was relevant because it lists all of the tribes and bands of the Yakama Nation. Next slide. We had reviewed over and over the pages back and forth, Anastasia and I feel the artists really did an excellent job in our, you know, what we anticipated and wanted to convey in our messages about the landscape, the Columbia River, the importance of all of the plants and our people being on the cultural landscape. And we made our suggestions, and artists were very willing to, you know, submit another image and to where we could approve it. And the click and tap basket was actually based on a real basket that was done by Nettie Kunikai. She was a master click-and-tap basket weaver in our area from the Columbia River. And we had to do a memo to have approval for the book, and it went through our Department of Natural Resources superintendent, and it went up to our cultural director who he approved it for print. And I let Anastasia know, and it was just in time to get it done for NATHPO this year, where we presented it. Next page. So this is where we were at in September in Reno, having our presentation, Anastasia, Shannon, myself, and Keegan. And then now we have the blog post that was done by Anastasia, and I think that's going really well. I like how that turned out. And then we're just been preparing for this webinar, and I'm very excited to have this tool for our children that Samantha Redhart, our STEM coordinator, will be able to pass out to our tribal communities when she goes and does outreach. Thank you. This is the actual page of the elders, and we did a lot of research and have the QR codes here to where you could research further. So it goes beyond the grade levels of 3 to 6, I believe. So, and it took a lot of editing to ensure that we wanted the right words in there, and tried to include as much as we could on these pages. And our hopes are that these two mentors who have mentored me in the past, they will be able to, their education will be ongoing, continuing to the next generations for being the land stewards of our area. This is a page where we were working with the artists, and some of the slight changes, they were very subtle, but once they got it back to us, we were able to approve it. And we wanted the intergenerational teachings being shown on the artwork. So like the older digger with the younger, child teaching, that's what we want in our communities, on our landscapes. And the final product, is going to have deep rooted values that we encourage our youth to take great pride in their cultural resources, in their cultural identity, and that they will learn some of the language, especially our hopes are that they will take a lot of pride in. I like that on the page where they're able to put their handprint and pledge, that they want to protect their lands. And I give applause to the artists because they listened to our concerns and edited their work and demonstrated their professionalism. This page, okay. I opted to change the picture of the pottery that was on the bottom of the page to something that was more from our area. I knew my grandmother had actually had a mortar like this, and these are the types of artifacts that we would have in this community, because we do not do pottery. So that's why we edited from the last book that came out. And I think I'm done here.
Oh, next up we have Lorelei. Are you ready?
Yes. Shich Pachwai, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Lorelei Kruger. I'm a member of the Yakama Nation, and I'm a self-taught digital artist who's been creating since about 2017. And this is just a little bio if you want to read it really quick. And first off, I'd like to thank this group for allowing me to take part in this project. It was really fun, and it was my first time doing any sort of activity book. So I want to thank you guys for that. We can go to the next slide. And I felt it was important to show pictures of my upbringing, because it was instilled in me at a young age, that it was important to practice our traditions and learn about our resources. And so this is me as a young child gathering roots. And I remember many times going with our whole family. My mom, she had two sisters and a brother, and we would all go together, like their kids. So all of my cousins and me, and we would go up there and gather for, a whole day and do that like consecutively for like a couple of weeks, I remember. And it gets harder to do that in like today's day and age, like walking both paths and trying to keep up these traditions and gathering, living with jobs and kids and all that. Yeah, so go ahead and go to the next slide. And this continued, and I had two aunties who sort of guided me, and they allowed me to be a part of, we call it the line, like when you go out to dig roots. And so this was me when I was about, I want to say 12 or 13. And so I did that for a few years until I became a mother, and then I sort of stepped back from that. But it's still important, I still teach my kids the importance of taking part in everything. And go to the next slide. Oh, and this is me, and when I had my daughter, she was about 1, this is about 1997 or 98 at Priest Rapids Longhouse Root Feast. And that's my mom to my left in the photo and my daughter that I'm holding. And yeah, it just shows, you know, the guidance that you get and how it's passed on and how we keep these traditions going. And oh, go ahead, next slide. And so to the left is the finished maze that I did, that I was asked to do. And I was asked to create some obstacles, and they wanted like a bear and maybe some litter. And so I don't know why I chose to do it in like a circle, but I wanted it to be a circle from the beginning. I knew that much. And so the right side shows like the little sketch that I did and how I made it by just creating a bunch of circles in different sizes. And I'm gonna have to pause for a little bit because my boys got home and I need to open the door for them.
We maybe want to jump to Keegan and then we can come back.
That sounds good.
Okay, we'll see. Maybe it'll be a quick one.
Cher Patrai International Willem Kohok, Koshifumki Keegan Livermore, Yakama Connect, Kutenkash, Ichishkin Sunwetpa. My name is Keegan Livermore. I use he, him, his, and gender neutral pronouns like they, them. I currently serve as the strategic planning manager for the Yakama Nation language program. In addition to preserving many of the cultural resources and our landscape that we as Yakama people have a continued connection to. A large part of our tribes and communities work is preserving, reconnecting with, and learning our tribal Ichishkin language. Our people have been, I'll say generationally, disconnected from our Ichishkin language due to the residential boarding schools and forced assimilation of our tribal peoples. And so our community, to my knowledge, from a lot of newspaper articles and elders, I would say our language has been an active community revitalization since the 1950s and 60s. There were a number of linguists and community members and elders who were working to document the things that they had been taught by their elders and that they remembered. And so we've had community and school initiatives in teaching our young people to understand and speak our language since then. In 2016, our elected tribal council passed a resolution stating that the preservation, protection, and perpetuation of the Yakama languages shall be elevated to the highest of policy and administrative priorities with the goal of 100% fluency, which is an incredibly high bar for someone working at my language program with me. But it is very exciting to see the tribe wanting our language to be in as many places as possible, be it both in our work here at the language program, but also across all the other programs that we have. So a lot of our work here is to collaborate as much as we can with different tribal programs, with schools and community organizations and other external organizations to have our language be as visible and present, and to show that our language is absolutely still living and still relevant to our tribal community members to this day. So if you are interested in learning more about our language and seeing some of the other resources that we have created, you can go to our website. The URL is here, www.yakamalanguage.org. There's a whole bunch of community initiatives and materials and videos, like some of the ones that we were able to include in this activity booklet, that you can download and see for yourself there. Next slide. Uh, we were wonderfully, excitingly involved to collaborate on this project. We were brought in by Trina, who has done a really, really good job of incorporating all forms of Yakama language and culture into her work with the ERWM program. So on pretty much every page inside this activity booklet, there is at least some Ichishkin, which is incredibly exciting to me. Most of the activity pages have titles in both English and Ichishkin that are there. And there are some pages that have more Ichishkin on it, either featured words or longer translations. And to go along with all this, because not everyone knows how to read or understand our language yet, we've also created a video that you can access through a QR code at the bottom of the page and on the Save History web pages to be able to sort of read through the book and hear Ichishkin, all the different titles and words in there pronounced through my wonderful dulcet tones, my big debut of sorts with this booklet. But being able to go through and hear all the titles and their translations, so you can get a sense of how the language sounds in ways that we have tried to frame some of these archaeology concepts and cultural preservation concepts in our language, which was a very exciting opportunity for us. Next slide. So I want to highlight a couple of pages with either very fun translations or maybe translations that are a little more thought-provoking and exciting to think about. This first one, the maze that Lorelei was describing that we'll jump back to in a moment, on page 14, the English word maze is maybe a little funky to try and bring into our tribal language, but our program decided to really, with a lot of these, we had to think about what is the core concept? What is being described here? A maze is a variety of paths that you can take. One or two of them will be correct. Not all of them will be, but it's many paths. So figuring out a way to translate this as uschut, a word meaning many, many paths to go off of. So you can see the Ichishkin typed out at the very top of the page, and then the English translation written underneath it. Next slide. For some other page titles, we had the fun challenge of turning some of the titles into a slightly longer sentence to, again, more accurately describe what was going on in there. So on page 21, we had the activity Match the Tracks, which, as again, we were sort of reconceptualizing and thinking about it, we were realizing, oh, you were being asked to choose the animal from the tracks seen. So we were able to translate this as Asapawitam Watikshkinek. You will choose them from the tracks. Next slide. Our last title translation that I want to highlight is maybe a little more philosophical than some of the other more direct activity ones. It's on page 16, the title, What Lasts? And so as we were thinking about, okay, what does it mean to last through history or over a great number of years? We were thinking, oh, like what will be here? What will still be here? What will remain in this way? So we translated this one as a question sentence. Tun iwata ichna, what will be here in the future, is the connotation there. Next slide. So those were just titles that we had translated on almost all of the pages. On some of the pages, we included some additional Ichishkin language in some of the stories or on some of the like expository writing in there. So on page number 9, pictographs on the lake, Timani Pashwa Watampa, we read a story about Cedar and her grandmother, going and looking at some petroglyphs on some of the rocks around the river. And so we included a couple of bolded Ichishkin words in that story mixing the two languages together as many of our community members already do in their everyday lives, providing some translation so then as they're used throughout that short story, we're able to see it in multiple contexts. So here on the left, we have a brief excerpt. Cedar and her grandma paddled their wasis canoe on a wana river surrounded by bluffs. So these are words to an organic way to highlight this vocab while still having mostly English around it. On the right side of this slide, on pages 10 and 11, the Did You Know Mishnam Ashukwasha pair, we have on the open double page spread of the book, we have English on one page, page 10, and full Ichishkin sentences on the right side on page 11. So here we've provided both the Ichishkin and English for you to see, following somewhat similar capitalization norms, stylistic choices, so you can make those associations. So you can see under example 2, Nishayas Iwa Anakwanak Nishaikan Khana Tima, places where a community lived are called sites. And this full page is again read aloud in that video, linked to that QR code. So you can see kind of what a slightly longer form Ichishkin sentence work looks like, and be able to hear that and get a sense of the sounds and sights of the Columbia River Plateau here in the Pacific Northwest. Being able to include our Yakama language in this booklet alongside teachings from our elders and others was incredibly exciting, to be able to have our language and culture sort of presented in a very professional, exciting way for children and community members of all ages through this booklet.
I think we're going to jump back to Lorelei here. So I'm going to jump back to her slides if I can do that.
Yeah, sorry about that. My kids were locked out.
Did you want to be on this slide or you want to be on the
This one's fine.
slide? Okay. And just before you get started, I just want to let the people know, in case they don't see in the chat, we see your questions and we will answer them at the end. So feel free to type them in there and we'll get to them at the end. All right, I'll pass it off to Lorelei.
Okay. It was brought up as an idea to show the process, and these images that I have, like the one with the maze, that's all that I saved from my work that I was doing during the process of making these. So this is just like a rough sketch that I did of like the woman is going to be bent over, and then this is next to it on the right side is the finished part, and then on another layer is where I put the hat and the dots and like erased the dress and made it into a connect the dots. And then the landscape was sort of hard for me because I've never really done anything like that. So I was trying to think like, what do we see when we go out there? And so I did the best that I could on that part. And the next slide. And then, yeah, on the left, you can see the finished connect the dot of the click-a-tap basket. And I just made sort of, I love the triangle designs that come in, that are made into these baskets. And so that's what I did. And then you can see like the sketching of the huckleberries that I did at first before I finalized them and made them a little smoother and finished. And I feel like work like this activity book is a fun way to introduce these lessons to children, and the community. And it was really fun and got me out of my comfort zone, I guess, as an artist. And I think that's it for is it?
I think that's your last slide. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Cool. Thank you, Lorelei. All right, Samantha.
Hello, my name is Samantha Redhart. I'm with the Yakama Nation, ERWM, and I brought a guest with me to say a couple words.
Hello, my name is Alex Montgomery and I'm 10 years old. I'm in the 5th grade at Harrah Elementary. I love this book. I'm Samantha's nephew. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Yay.
I was trying to get my grandson to do it, but he's a little shy. And I asked him and he said, oh, I can do that. Anyway, my name is Samantha Redhart. I work with the Yakama Nation as the STEM coordinator. And this definitely was a labor of love, working on this with our team and partnering with the Yakama Nation programs, cultural staff, technical staff, language speakers, and educators. Sorry, I had to shush them. And educators and this collaboration taught me how to value different perspectives, and grateful to collaborate with such talented colleagues on this project. Every idea, meeting, and brainstorm made this stronger. And my first slide that's up is what I do as my role for STEM and education and outreach, working with the public, not only just the Yakama members, but surrounding communities, students, and schools. ERWM and partners can accommodate to any audience and disciplines for education and outreach in person and virtual platforms. And next slide. And I'm just wanted to share a couple slides or images of past events that were planned. I feel like I try to make Hanford a little fun with all these projects. The Day of Reflection, our Hanford Journey, we do boat tours with Yakama Nation community members, the public, and schools, students, and teachers. We've had art contests. We've partnered with WSU and staff. We've done Hanford trivia. If you scan those QR codes, we've taken kids to LIGO. And next slide. Oh, I worked with Marshall Islands. I always like to share, yeah, you can go, sorry. I just saw that last second. And then I like to share the picture of the elk, because those are some of the elk out at Hanford. And some of our staff here, I want to acknowledge all their hard work and dedication to Hanford, past, present, and future. And this is my favorite photo I like to share, that, you know, it's not about what you see, but what we don't see. And, you know, demanding cleanup of Hanford. And also on the image is a picture of a Hanford tour that we do, private tours, and we hand these out to all our participants. And I enjoy learning about Hanford past, present, and future. I would describe myself as naively enthusiastic about reaching out to further develop skills through communicating Hanford science to diverse audiences, encouraging junior scientists, and mostly sharing why Hanford needs your voice. Thank you.
All right. So we're going to try and wrap up the presentation part of this in the next 5 minutes, and then we'll have the last 10 minutes of the hour for Q&A. So Shannon and I, as we mentioned at the beginning, we'd like to see more of these books in different regions of the United States. And so when we were working on this, we have been thinking about it as a process that we can reuse. Thinking of this as a customizable, this book as a customizable template that is that customization is guided by whoever our tribal partner is, that we're doing multiple drafts of the text and the art, that we are working on or keeping intergenerational sharing at the forefront of our mind as we're developing, you know, the drafts of this book, as we're deciding, you know, what we want that content to be, that we're having a lot of breaks to review and make sure we have consensus on the content that is going into the book. And just keeping in mind, it takes about a year to develop one of these. As I mentioned in the past, it took about a year to develop it. The actual time we spent on different parts of the project, we had 2 months in planning. We had 2 months in that call for artists. And then we had all of this time from February all the way to August. That was assembling all of the content, tweaking it, changing it, coming back, a little bit of going back and forth there. We've got a formal approval from the Yakama Nation in August for the book, and then it was printed and formally released at the NAFPO conference for the same place that Trina and I met, but in September of this year. So with this book comes a lot of different opportunities for that intergenerational learning, language revitalization that we incorporated into this one. It is engaging and accessible for children and families. It strengthens cultural visibility and pride. There are things you need to keep in mind though, if you know, maybe you are your community wanted to do something like this. That some knowledge can only be shared in home and community settings. It maybe is not appropriate to be in such a public of a sphere. This book, whether the printed version of it or the PDF version of it, it might go beyond your community. It could be in hands of anybody in the US. So just keep that in mind about what you feel comfortable sharing. And that really early on, we're starting that collaboration where we're bringing in that knowledge and we're balancing education and then the archaeological protection. So I think this one is for Shannon.
It's good to know who should be on the team and have discussions early on about what the approval process will look like. And also talk about permissions. For BIA funded projects, we often want to reserve the right to reproduce this and distribute it in print and online, but that's a conversation we can have as well. We do have rules that these books are not available for resale. There's no commercial use allowed. So we provide these for free to tribal nations and tribally affiliated programs. Next slide. I wanted to share a brief sense of how much something like this costs. So we're a nonprofit. That means some of our costs are reduced to begin with. And we were also using a template that already existed. So this can vary from $10,000 to $15,000. Each artist received an honoraria of $500 for each image. We can work with an archaeological illustrator or not, depending on what the goals are. If you want something, they can help fill gaps potentially. We can also provide honoraria for the language department or other knowledge holders who are involved. There's a bit of staff time for our team to coordinate meetings and write any content or make changes to the book. And then printing in bulk costed about $2.50 per copy for 1,000 copies. But if you order a smaller amount, that will be more at higher price per copy. Next slide.
We want to, once you finally get them printed, you got to get them in people's hands. So a big thank you to Columbia Riverkeeper. They actually paid for all of the printing out of a printer in Portland all the books that went to the Yakama Nation. So thank you very much for taking care of that, Columbia Riverkeeper. As we mentioned before, the book is available for free online on our website, savehistory.org. And then once you've got it printed and it's ready to go out, you got to promo it so people know how to find it. So that's part of what we're doing here with the webinar. The blog post that's up on savehistory.org, you can learn even more about the development of this book from our panelists here that have contributed. I think we've got a couple of more information from some of our artists too who have contributed to this. As well as if you want to learn more about our artists, there's information there on our website here. This is a picture from the NAFPO conference when we formally released it. And so that was the big promo when it came out. Again, here are all of our artists that contributed. These are all awesome folks. These two, they contributed to the nationwide version of the book, and we reused some of their images in this one. And then all of these artists were new artists that we brought into this project. So they were wonderful to work with. Really amazing, incredible folks. And I encourage you to go check out their website or check out their social media. And then this is how you can find us and our organizations in the future if you have any questions that maybe aren't going to get answered here. So I got to pull up the questions now. Oh, and I want to say thanks to Sam and to Samantha's nephew, our surprise panelist. I liked the surprise panelists a lot. Okay. Question number 1. Let's see. Oh, someone wanted to know about promos. Um, hmm. I think just if you go to safehistory.org, or you go to any of these websites, this is where all of our information is. We have our social media at safehistory.org. It looks like Columbia Riverkeeper would like to answer that question. Do you want to jump in, Simone?
Which question? The first
Oh,
one?
sorry. Yeah, it says, question. This is such a cool resource, and it's great to
Oh,
learn
I
about
see
the
it.
process
Yes.
and the artists who made it possible.
Yeah, so we did link to any websites that they did have in the slides, as well as some have Instagram accounts that I think have their own links in them. The question is looking for shops or websites to circulate, particularly for holiday season, if you're looking to get some more artwork from these artists. The blog post has them, as well as our thank you for attending email that's going to circulate after this webinar will also have that information. So thank you, Nellis, for the question. Another individual, Catherine, yes, we will be sending slides with the recording for folks to review and to see the photos, I think, for a little bit longer, and you can download. I think, Keegan, you answered a question about the tribal council resolution. If it includes cultural resource program in that.
Yeah, I had typed out a quick answer to this, but yeah, that resolution in 2016 sort of helped reframe how the Yakama Nation approaches work through its division of cultural services, and creating a division with both the cultural resources program and the language program underneath it. So helping us sort of refocus some of our goals and energies towards making sure that the tribe is protecting our cultural heritage.
Great. And then another question here that I think I said we answered already, but we didn't. So hi there, really appreciated the insider information and perspectives about the making of this activity book. This seems like a great resource for kids. How should I approach sharing this with other non-Yakama children?
I can maybe talk a little bit about this. So Shannon and I, the other version of the book that we have, that nationwide version, I'll see if I can bring it up. The nationwide version is something that we've been sharing a lot, and we don't just distribute to, children in tribal nations, but to everybody. And that's part of that bigger mission of, trying to change hearts and minds and like making people realize that we need to care about archaeological sites. So for me, I'll admit that I haven't actually like sat down and like did the activity book with kids, but I think just like going through it and like being really genuine, honest of like, oh, I'm learning about this too with you in this moment. If you're the parent and you're the kid and you're going through it together, you can both be going on that learning journey together. If there is something in there that you are maybe didn't know or you're learning about, or you're and just being really genuine and having that learning experience with them and just being really open-minded. If someone who knows more about education has more insights on this, I encourage you to jump in, because that's all I got.
A thought that's coming to my mind is I do an amount of education about language and culture, even though maybe non-Yakama youth or peoples, they may not have a heritage connection to this land, but they are currently perhaps still living in these areas. They have access and are able to support tribes and communities in connection, reconnection, etc. with this. So I think that using this activity booklet as a discussion starting point for what sorts of things are should we keep in mind in preserving these landscapes, these connections, these artifacts, I think would be maybe my starting point with those young people, to help them think both locally of wherever they are engaging with the booklet, but also maybe using this as a starting point for doing some research of, okay, like what tribes are in my area if I don't specifically live in the Columbia Plateau where this booklet is sort of primarily based at this time. So this, I think, could be a good starting point, but not everything, because some research will need to be done on your part.
All right, we have some other questions. So how can we become a distribution point for these? We own Traditions Gift Shop in Lewiston, Idaho, and our Nez Perce owned and operated such an amazing project. Great work to all who contributed. My mind is spinning with ideas for our own Nimmy Poo version. How exciting.
Shannon and I could talk a little bit about this. We distribute the book for free to tribal nations, and then for organizations that support Native communities. For example, there's Native Health here in Arizona that provides healthcare services for the Native American community in Arizona. So we will provide that for free there. For other organizations, though, we don't charge for like the book itself, but we may ask for the cost of shipping and the cost of printing. We don't make a profit off it. That's a big part of the work that we do with the BIA, is that we can't actually like pay for the content of it. Like the book itself is free, but it's the getting it to you that if you are maybe like a for-profit business or don't fit that previous description, that we might need to ask for a little bit of money. Does that sound about right, Shannon? Am I missing anything?
Yeah, I want to emphasize this book cannot be sold by anyone. It's really supposed to be a public access resource, but I want to talk to you. I'd definitely be interested in hearing more about your plans, and if you have ideas for other ways to distribute it, we'd be really open to that conversation.
Yeah, we want this book out in front of as many people as we can.
So definitely screenshot this page, but we will send slides. And then the last question we have on here, and I know we're a little over time, but is Save History planning on working on books like these with Idaho or Minnesota tribes such as the Nez Perce or Dakota?
We are in like early talks to do a version that is like a Northern Plains version, as well as one that is like an Ojibwe version with a Minnesota Ojibwe tribe. But that we're very, very early in those stages, and like we're still in the planning, and we still have to, so it's still up in the air of what that would look like. So yes, if you know other people who are like really motivated and working for their tribe or for a tribal organization that serves kids, we want to know who you are and see if you're interested in it. So it'll be a while before those versions come out, so don't hold your breath, but it's something we're looking towards for the future.
Well, thank you to all of our panelists for this awesome discussion and talking about this book and sharing everything. I wanted to pop in the chat a take action petition for our Protect Pushpum campaign, which is a sacred site that is under threat of development for a pump storage proposal. So if you're fired up and looking to see what you could do to protect cultural resources right now, definitely sign our petition, and urging Governor Ferguson to take a position in opposition to the Goldendale Pump Storage Project. Once again, thank you to all our panelists. It was really great having you on here. And yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you so
Thank you,
much.
Simone.
Thanks, everybody. This was fun.
Yep, it was fun.
Go ahead and end